Hey everybody, it's the Mad Master here, and I'm doing a video. It's another political video, but nevertheless, I've decided to do more political videos, unlike I was saying a few weeks or months back. So it looks like Youngkin has won Virginia, and I think his first name was Glenn, and then got really close in New Jersey. So we're seeing like Republicans win governorships again and other elections and so forth. Sorry about the pause. I'm not trying to stammer or stutter or anything. I just woke up. But this really is a referendum on a lot of different issues that are going on. And I'm going to say that I think it's less about left versus right than just the insane contradictions of the Democratic Party and the Democrat, supposedly left-leaning elites. I know a lot of people disagree that it has nothing to do with socialism or anything like that, but would disagree with that point that I'm making. I think there are regions where leftism is seen as dangerous or a joke, and that's probably part of it. But I think the messaging is a huge cause of what's going on now, as well as just what we've been through the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, where regular people who happen to think differently, maybe perhaps bigoted, are being dehumanized and stigmatized and just treated like trash. And it's not only just white people or a certain groups of people or anything like that. It's just regular people that are working the working class. I know Richard Wolff had something. I was watching a little bit more of him. I do not agree with him on economics, by the way, but he's made some good points about why people feel so alienated. So I almost think the Youngkin thing is because the Democrats have made people feel even more alienated the last year and a half, 2 years. And we all know one of the reasons: lockdowns, mask mandates, but not done in a way that was consistent or even seemed to be helpful in many ways. And all these other band-aids coming about too. It's like they just want to control things. They don't really want to help your average person. They gave these measly checks as far as as far as the virus goes and stuff, like the $2,000 check that Trump did, and then there was the controversy with Pelosi delaying the checks as far as all that, and it just got into the precipice of at this point where we're you have these very divisive things like CRT and wokeism and masks and all sorts of things. And it's like, and on the surface, it's like, oh, well, those Democrats, they care about people. And it's like, but it's just a business as usual. Otherwise, it's these token things that they pick out and like they ignore everything else. And it doesn't even seem like they're really legitimately wanting to help regular people with their lives, or not that government has to all the time. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying just their fakeness, their these illusions that they perpetuate, and people have had enough. So this is my thought of the modern Democratic Party and the modern Republican Party. The modern Republican Party represents the past, and it represents the past in a way that's probably more normal to many people who live in America. And I don't mean the 50s. Some of it represents like this, bigoted, old school way of thinking of things. But some of it just represents, this is one thing that I thought when I saw some of the Youngkin ads. It reminded me of 90s Democrat, campaign ads. And, seeing the McAuliffe ad just reminded me of just bullshit. Actually, no. Now that I'm thinking about it, it reminds me of the early 2000s Republican ads which is ironic. Like, just attack your enemy with, just like the Lee Atwater approach to things. Just clump everybody together and stigmatize a whole group of people. Except for, it's not, minorities or anything like that. Like Lee Atwater was apt to do was more Trump supporters and January 6th people. It was just, it didn't really say anything that McAuliffe would do as a governor for the state of Virginia. It didn't say, there was no policy in there, and neither with some of Youngkin's ads. I'm sure there was some. I just saw one. But Youngkin seemed almost like a 90s Democrat in comparison, which is really strange to say. But it seems like the Republicans are more and more representing the old school, like, normalcy that we had, while the Democrats have this sort of mixed approach to reality. It's like and I would dare say, so the old corruption of the Republican Party in some ways is preferable in the long run to the new corruption. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, okay, these corporations that are more old school in their approach to things. They're not like global corporations. You have con artists and stuff, like with the Trump thing, like these, people that sell supplements or are into gold and silver or whatever the hell. I'm just saying, like, there was like, that was more the thing with Trump and all these weird grifters that were part of his campaign and election and stuff. But then Democrats represent this big tech, oligarchical, new, dare I say, globalist approach to things in society that, to me, seems very dangerous in the long run. And pro-censorship, it's more like very Orwellian in its approach. I know a lot of the big tech people were more originally libertarian, which is funny, but so you have that old school, and then the Democrats have this neoliberalism and hypocrisy, and they'll claim to be for something and then just be totally hypocritical about it, and in practice, in action, it's false. It's a deception. So looking at the Republicans, it's like, well, you kind of get what I mean, they make promises too they don't keep, but it's like the newer Republicans that are out there, they're just saying this shit. They're just, they're upfront in your face about what they're all about. So who are voters going to vote for? Are they going to vote for these deceptive Democrats, or these, maybe not perfect, obviously, but very upfront and vocal about what they're about, Republicans? Not, and I'm not saying that Trump was like a true populist or anything like that. Far from it. He lied a lot about who he really was, and the election. But I'm just saying that when you have these two corrupt parties, the one that seems like it's more of an insidious, deceptive corruption right now are the Democrats. And then these issues, these very divisive issues, CRT, which I may do more videos about because I've done a lot more research. CRT and telling parents, just these weird statements that the left are making now. And it's not even about, like I said, it's not about class. They're throwing away the class part of it, and that's very dangerous, because they used to represent the working class, the lower classes, the middle, even the middle class. And that's why we had, at least like the economic system used to bring prosperity for years. I don't know. I haven't studied history enough of the 70s and how inflation happened back then and everything like that, and how the neoliberals stepped in and stuff. But now the neoliberals' time is done, of course, and that's what I'm saying. But they used to stand for the working person. At least they pretended to. But now more Republicans are at least pretending to stand for the working class. And it started with, Pat Buchanan in the 90s, and, Trump in the early 2000s, and Ron, to some extent Ron Paul, even though he's more, you can argue that his way would, increase the power of the corporations or whatever if you're against libertarianism. I don't know. The jury's out on some of that. I haven't really studied it enough. it's hard to say what history would bring if we had a truly libertarian society. Oh, it's Somalia. It's like Somalia. A lot of democratic people. It's like, it'd be like Somalia. Fuck you. What? How do you know it wouldn't be like Hong Kong in the 90s? That's what John Stossel always said. I used to hate John Stossel to some extent, but nowadays, I'm identifying with him more and more. But yeah, it's like these very contradictory messages from the left, the pseudo left, the woke left, or whatever you want to call it. These very Orwellian statements, like, just the general sense that with the virus stuff, that they can't even get their messaging right. They say, don't do your own research. Oh, if you're against mandates, you're a Trump supporting bigot racist. It's like clumping everybody together, demagoguing people, being, demagoguery, and just all this stuff that they're doing is, in a way, almost more evil than the Republicans or Trump. It could lead to worse outcomes for our society, because we have the risk of authoritarian and totalitarianism is very high with these tech companies. There's these laws in Britain about, you can't there's trying to be proposed about not being able to criticize someone on social media, or in Australia they have this digital ID to get online, all this stuff, like these and they haven't been implemented yet, but there's some dangerous precedents being set right now by big tech corporations and, dare I say, the Democrats, because the Democrats are in the pockets, they're the pockets of and in bed with the tech oligarchs. So the common person will hear about all this stuff, regardless if they may not believe that we should have private health care, or they may believe in Medicare for all. They may believe in free preschool, or they may believe in even pulling out all their troops from every country, and military against the military-industrial complex. May believe in decriminalizing drugs, but they see the Democrats talk about these key issues, these weird niche kind of ideas. They mix these niche ideas with very predatory economic ideas of neoliberalism, and this insidious totalitarian bent, that they're like, well, I'm going to vote Republican, because Republicans, at least, they're the old school corruption. I know someone said that about Biden and Trump, one of my friends, but I'm kind of paraphrasing what he said about Biden and Trump. Is like, well, Biden represents the old school corruption. I prefer that. I don't think that's the case in a lot of ways. Maybe Trump was like this new thing with some of his stuff. He had all these weird, like I said, these grifters. Like it was kind of like the conspiracy crowd, and like the more edgy social crowd, and like these like people that would, these like affiliate marketer kind of people, even like pickup artists and stuff. Like I know what the hell is his name, supported Trump, and it was like this weird group of like these internet entrepreneurs, but not big tech, and like scam grifter art, scam artists and all the con artists and stuff, and they coalesced together to be the Trump, part of the Trump thing. It wasn't Russia, by the way. It wasn't Russia. It was Russia. The deep state and the CIA and all those people, I'm more scared of them than even, what's his name? Was it Kevin Trudeau? Still a Trudeau, but that was his name, the guy that did like all those books in the 90s. Later went to prison for all these scams. He was on InfoWars once too, which is ridiculous. It's like, if you can't see through that, people like that. He actually suggested Scientology as a cure for like different diseases in one of his books once. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? Like a Scientologist would be like I wouldn't be surprised if that would be like a Trump campaign donor, Scientologist and stuff. It had that kind of weird bent to it, but these very mainstream establishment people are getting more and more corrupt in a more insidious way, which scares me a lot more. Just outright, it's not like they outright lie all the time. It's just when they lie, it just seems more deceptive and more evil. And that's what's happened the last 3 years. Just look what happened with, pretty much the point for me that things started to turn is when Buttigieg, and I don't know if it was Iowa, owned that app or whatever. That I don't remember the whole details. There was some shenanigans, I'll just say, in Iowa. I think it was Iowa with Bernie and Buttigieg, and it's pretty much that was a turning point. I'm like, they're gonna fuck it. They're gonna fuck this up. We're not gonna get Bernie in there, and it's gonna be Biden, probably the worst case scenario. It's like, yeah, the Democrats are fucked. Fuck them. So that all said, there's probably things about Youngkin I hate, obviously, or any of these Republicans that are winning or nearly winning, like in New Jersey. But it's gotten so off the pasture that I'm finding myself like at least sympathetic to the Republicans winning, at least temporarily, until we have a better system, which I don't know if we will ever. But it's like, what would I rather have? It's like the predictable bullshit Republican economic shit, or this worsening of this global system that they're trying to do, or whatever the hell they're trying to do with all this stuff. Where I'm at the Great Reset, and you sit in a pond and eat bugs, and you're not allowed to go anywhere without your digital pass or whatever. I don't know. I'm not saying that that's the end result of this, but I'm way more scared of that than Republicans, putting some weird plastic in a river or something. I mean, but they both suck, no doubt. But what's more dangerous right now? I don't know. But I think the tide has turned because the Democrats have it fucked this up so much. The messaging is just so bad, and they're so corrupt and so weak. They're like weak but corrupt at the same time, and it's this weird mix. Because it's like, at least Trump was corrupt and powerful, had a power, gravitas about him, not, I know I took that. It's like these Democrats are like, I know I took all that money, but I'm sorry. It's like, it's this weird mix of things. There's a lot of soy being poured. I'll just say that. Soy and corruption. But yeah, I don't like what's going on with all that. So that's my thought on some of these elections. And it's not, like I said, it's not a referendum against socialism like some of these people said, like Sticks, Hex, and Hammer, or Razor Fist, or whoever, who I watch religiously to some extent. But I don't agree with them on that. I think there's elements of that, but I don't think it's the entire thing. I think it's more they're just out of touch with the American people. That's why Bernie was so popular, is because he was, in touch with the working class. That's why Trump was popular. Populism is popular. It's called populism. But yeah, this new thing, whatever the Democrats have been trying to do, it's in its death throes. I'm hoping, and it's lasted since the end of Carter's reign. They started to really push this in like the late 80s, and then Clinton got elected, and worked for a time, maybe with the economy, maybe it was okay. Maybe some of this stuff initially there was some crumbs that went to the people, back in the 90s or whatever, but it just started, and Glass-Steagall being overturned and all this stuff, is things started to go to shit in the 2000s, and after 9/11 and after the economic crisis, and now all this stuff going on. It's like, it's time for something new. We need some new things. We need some fresh blood. And AOC is certainly not fresh blood. She's the same old bullshit, just with a tax-rich, expensive dress for $1 million or whatever the fuck. I don't say it was $1 million, but we're being scammed and conned even to this day by those people, unfortunately. And it's time to end that reign of the two-party system. So to me, the pendulum is swinging the other way again, for obvious reasons. It goes back and forth, just like Alex Jones said years ago. It's like, 1 year it'll be this, 1 year it'll be that. It's both the same system. Of course, he changed his mind about that once his grift. What is it? Ted Anderson. He went to jail. The gold silver guy on Infowars, who sponsored the show. Once he was gone out of the picture, it seemed like Alex Jones went to more mainstream Republicanism. Not that he doesn't say some good things once in a while. I'm just saying It seemed like he was way less partisan before, like when he was a gold and silver grifter. Before, I'm just saying. So I don't know what's happening now is there's a backlash between the shit. I mean, CRT, some of the original thinkers that are attributed to that movement have been are basically, if you read between the lines, are pro segregation. And they're against they're going against even Malcolm X's more moderate, more pre-Mecca moderate position. Some of these people, it's like, okay, so you're not even like Malcolm X, or you're not, not to mention Martin Luther King. You don't believe in, color blindness is bad. It's problematic. It's like, fuck you. Then what do you want? If you don't want people to be colorblind, who gives a fuck what color someone is, or what race or whatever their ethnic background is? If you're actually saying that color blindness is problematic because it perpetuates white supremacy, what the hell are you talking about? Because it's just this grievance culture. It's like this, and the wokeism is a big part of that. It's like, oh, don't assume someone's gender. Well, no one's going to do that in the real world. These people live in these ivory towers. They're privileged caste. That's what the Democratic Party is at this point. Is these privileged white liberals, majority white, actually. I'll just say, they live in their. I got 10%. Whoa, 10% to go on this video. Oh shit! I'm wearing shorts. Yeah, that was fucked up. But there are these privileged white liberals that believe in these ideas that they don't really have any application in the real world because they haven't lived in the real world. They haven't worked at a factory. They haven't worked at McDonald's. Maybe in high school they had a McDonald's job for 3 months and then their parents' fucking trust fund kicked in or whatever. These people. So it's very much a class thing. It's like, if you have that much time to think about those things, whoa, that was weird. That much time to think about these things, of course you're going to want to impose it on society. And there might be some truth to some of these ideas too, and I'm not saying that, but it's like this grand scheme. In the grand scheme of things, you're disconnected from the average person, from your average, even middle class person. You're this upper class white liberal academic saying all this stuff. Oh, you gotta redefine this and just deconstruct this. It's like, nobody gives a shit when they're fucking flipping a burger for 10 hours straight. They're not going to be thinking about like what gender or what fifth gender there is or some shit. Nobody's going to fucking think about that. That's why like Richard Wolff and Jimmy Dore and all these people are popular. They're leftists, but they're saying that all this stuff is insane. And I mean, it's just it's meaningless to, or not. I'm not insane, but it's meaningless to take out that class element ever. And when it's the actual upper class, the bourgeoisie, pushing a lot of this shit now. And that's what happened to the Democratic Party. They're the rich white liberals who want to impose all their shit on people. They have control issues with control and authority. They feel disempowered from their small dicks or whatever, so they want to control everybody. It's the same fucking thing as ever, Maybe Vladimir Lenin, I think except for Stalin, all the original Bolsheviks were from upper middle class families, if I recall correctly. It's the same damn thing. I'm not saying they're all commies. I'm just saying this rich white liberal thing, like Hassan Piker. Oh my God, hypocrite exhibit A, pretty much. These types of people, these brocialists. Except for Jackson Hinkle, I like him a lot, but he's a little bit. He's a little bit more of a dissident, I'll say, even though he calls himself a Marxist-Leninist. I'm just like, what the fuck? But, a lot of the stuff he says is pretty spot on. He's, a little bit better. But I would love to see him and Hassan Piker to have a debate, by the way. That would be great. But yeah, these people, this whole thing is, and I live in the town, it's gentrification 101 too. I mean, these people are the gentrifiers. They are they're not the gentrified, they're the gentrifiers, a lot of these people. So that's why Republicans might make a big comeback in they're already starting to, is because of these Democrats being so toxic. And I'm not saying the Republicans aren't toxic too. I mean, I think that both parties need to be smashed and destroyed into the dustbin of history. I think the two-party system has been a failure in many ways. We're on the decline as a country. Not that I care about nationalism or anything like that. I always thought it was stupid, jingoism and shit. But yeah, the Republicans are winning, and they'll continue to win. They'll win lawsuits, about all these mandates and stuff. I predict, they'll win a lot of these lawsuits. Maybe some of them will stay. Like after 9/11, we still have to take our shoes off at the airport. We might still have to get a test before we go overseas or whatever for the what. But I don't think all these mandates are going to last if the trend continues to go with the "Let's Go Brandon," which I have a bumper sticker now, which I'm sure I'll be clumped in with terrorists because that's what the blue check marks are doing. You're a terrorist if you say "Let's Go Brandon." See, that these people are just insanely incompetently digging their own grave. That's the problem. They're so because they're out of touch with regular society. They think everything's some scientific, not scientific. Scientism is a problem too, but sociology is a science, but there's other sciences that can contradict and coalesce with that can totally defy what they're talking about. So nobody gives a shit about, if they're working a shitty job for, 50 hours a week, about what the fuck you label someone, or a Halloween costume that's controversial. Nobody fucking cares. They don't have time. People have kids. They don't have time to write all these blogs and read all these blogs. That's for the privileged. That's for the elite that have the time to think about all this stuff. It's like kind of why it's like Guns, Germs, and Steel, where Jared Diamond, he says this is the reason why these civilizations had these, advances and stuff, because of weather patterns and all this stuff. It's like these people up north, of course, traditionally had more time indoors. So they got to think about all this weird shit, and they got to do whatever. People in the global south were a little bit, had to be outdoors more because it was fucking 80 degrees all the time. It's kind of one of those things. It's the same now. It's like the rich elite, dare I say white people, who are probably, at least some of them are closet white supremacists. I believe they are. I've known enough liberals, quote unquote, that used to be racist, and I was less racist, and they said all this stuff when I met them, and then they turn into these woke monsters. You can't say that. It's like, well, you're trying to overcompensate for your own perceived racism. That's what you're trying to do. That's probably half of these people. Just like, another good thing, two things. There's male feminists who get accused of sexual assault. That was almost a meme for a while. And then there's the closet gay Republican who's a total homophobe and, with policy and looking, what their rhetoric is. So it's kind of the same concept, I guess you'd say. So what do I think is going to happen with all this? Well, there needs to be a reckoning. And I think the reckoning needs to happen with the other side too, with the Republicans. I mean, obviously. But I think right now they present a return to normalcy in a lot of ways to people, to your average person. I mean, even if they don't actually represent a return to normalcy, they're perceived to be a return to normalcy. And obviously the return to normalcy as far as the virus stuff goes, if you look at Florida's numbers are still lower than California's, by the way, might I add. California was hit worse, and they had more lockdowns, more restrictions. It's just a fact. Just look it up. I think Florida's number 2 or number 3. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that they're a lot worse off. New York and California, Florida, and Texas are in the top 4. But there was 2 that locked down and 2 didn't. What fucking difference does it make at this point? 2 that didn't have mask man. 2 different that didn't have mask mandates. 2 did. And what difference does it make? And as more people realize this, as more people are red pilled about that, they'll be like, what the fuck are they doing this shit for? Why do I have to wear a mask when I enter the restaurant and sit down and take a mask off for 2 hours and then put it back on when I go to the bathroom? Some of this stuff that most of this stuff does not make sense, obviously. So people are seeing that and say, well, these Democrats, and then they see the Democrats go on these trips when they tell people not to go anywhere, and doing all this shit like London Breed or fucking the mayor of Austin or Newsom or Whitmer or her daughter or whatever, or fucking Fitzer. I can go down the list, but I'm not going to go to the list of hundreds of Democratic politicians that have violated their own virus guidelines. But yeah, it's going to make you Republican. I mean, if it weren't for Trump, I probably would have voted Republican in the last election just because I was so pissed off at all the stuff that's happened, including to Bernie, just as a reaction to all this garbage. I'm just like, fuck this shit. But I couldn't vote for Trump, and I couldn't vote for Biden either. I mean, I can't vote for Trump just because he did. I mean, a lot of ways, I'll disagree with Stick, Sex, and Hammer about this. I think he was culpable in what has happened with all this stuff. I'll agree with Anomaly, even though they had that debate. But it's not even a matter of Trump, though. Who gives a fuck about Trump anyways? I mean, I don't really care. He's overrated by both sides. That's the whole thing. But Republicans represent in people's minds, he represents a return to normalcy, a return to the old ways, not having to like spray your hands with hand sanitizer if you walk down the street, or not being able to go into a bar and have a good time, regardless of whatever. And I know, a lot of people have died, blah 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 blah. Yeah, I know. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that's what they represent, especially for people, for the majority of people that don't get bad effects from what, and they may have secondary family members or friends, and that's probably the majority of people. It's like, well, my uncle has a friend that died, and then it's like, well, but I don't know anybody personally that died. It depends on the region, of course. If you live in Midwest, Midwest rural areas, it's like probably pretty rare, but if you live in a big city, obviously more people. So yeah, I just have to think about these things, but they need a reckoning. So in a way, I like the bitch slap that the Youngkin win does to the Democratic Party. I fucking love it. I savor it, at least temporarily. At least temporarily. I don't think that that's the direction we want to go in. He works for the Carlyle Group. I mean, that's a total neocon institution. Neocon versus neoliberal, basically. So I'm not a big fan of that. But what else are we going to do right now? I guess, just the apple carts need to be disturbed. They need to be upended. It's gotten really bad. It's gotten really bad. The corruption, hypocrisy, and just the hubris of the Democrats, And it's like Youngkin was talking about all this stuff, like parents shouldn't have a role in their child's education. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And a lot of parents are crazy. There's no denying it, but there was some tweet on Twitter I've read. Parents are crazy. Teachers are crazy. Everybody's crazy. But you're going to tell parents they're not going to have a fucking role in their child's education? What the fuck? Fuck the Democrats, man. Fuck them. I hope they lose miserably. And it doesn't mean that I like the Republicans. It just means that I'm going to savor every salty tear from these Democrats as they lose the next few years. Even though ultimately I think the system needs to be demolished and broken up and destroyed and reformed, if it can even be reformed. Maybe anarchism is a way. I'm becoming more of an anarchist. But I think it should be destroyed. And I think, considering since 2015, when since 88, when the Democratic Leadership Council was formed and neoliberalism became a thing, I think before that, the Democrats were good. The slowly insidious corruption of money in politics got to their heads. So they do these really weird contradictory things that confuse the American people, and that's why they're voting Republican. And I think I will laugh as more of their shit gets demolished. I will savor every fucking tear of the blue check mark. And I will listen to, obviously the dissident left that I follow, that I consider myself part of. I will, their warnings will be there loud and clear about the Republicans too, and I will agree with them obviously. But in the meantime, let's have fun. That's about all.